So, yeah, I'm Heidi and I'm codependent. And gosh, 2 hours to cover this material is a lot to ask. So, I'm going to be talking a lot. I decided not to do breakout rooms. So, you guys are just going to be probably taking a lot of data down. And I'd really like to spend more time to tell you guys my story, but I'm going to have to keep it brief. In a nutshell, I've been in CODA for 13 years now. In that time, I've worked the steps a lot. I have had a couple different sponsors. I think I'm on my third CODA sponsor. I have done a bunch of workshops. I started doing workshops probably when I had 7 years in or something like that. And so it's kind of been a fun way of being of service and learning more and being able to give back. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. I was raised in a family of codependency and abuse and alcoholism and raging and a lot of trauma, a lot of various addictions, sex addiction, workaholism. So I qualify. I can tell you that I qualify. There was a lot of abuse, abandonment, neglect in my childhood. I had parents. Both my parents were very controlling and very vocal and very demanding, so that's the type of environment that I grew up in, whereas some of us come from a background where we were ignored and left to figure things out for ourselves. I was the hero in my family. So I would until I became the rebel and someone else took my place as the hero. But generally I was the hero. And so I was expected to perform. I was expected to be perfect. I was expected to manage everybody and fix everybody and make everybody's lives work. So that's where my codependence was born. And, suffered a long time from that. I became an alcoholic when I was 13. My dad started molesting me and he was an alcoholic. And so he was, my dealer basically. And so that, as much as I hate to say it, like that made that experience tolerable. And that began my relationship with drugs and alcohol. I escaped my dad's abuse when I was 19, turned him into the police, kind of thought I would have a fresh start on life, and immediately jumped into a love addiction relationship. And my alcoholism continued to progress. Fast forward a few years, and I went back to school, dropped out of counseling, kind of became a perfectionistic sort of workaholic. Fast forward a couple more years, that didn't work. And then divorced my husband and became a meth addict and started sleeping around in bars. And I had a son, I guess early in my 20s, I had a son before all that happened. And, I went through the be a perfect mom phase. That didn't work, so then I became a drug addict and abandoned my son. That didn't work. Just nothing I ever did worked, and I never really knew what the root of the problem was. The problem was me. I'm a problem. I just can't figure it out. And then, my meth addiction took me to my bottom. I got clean in NA when I was 29. Thank God for that. I'm really, really grateful that I survived that experience. That was a really hard few years. And I was introduced to the 12 steps at that point, found a higher power. There was a lot of religious addiction in my childhood also. So I really needed a new higher power. So that was amazing. Found a ton of relief by in the fellowship, in the healing of the connections, getting a great sponsor, working the steps. But it didn't really do anything for my love addiction. So my love addiction spiraled off the charts. I found a drug of choice and married him. And eventually it all came out when I had about 6 years clean, I think, that he was a sex addict, that he'd been cheating on me the whole relationship. And my life spiraled out of control pretty much. And I stayed clean through that. And I just there was no God anymore. I could not feel God in my life. I was in so much pain. I felt like a fraud. I was, I felt betrayed by NA. I felt betrayed by God. I didn't know how much shame I was fixing with this fantasy life that I had been living with my ex, so that got me to CODA. The good news is it got me to CODA, and I still do an NA program, but CODA is my primary program. It's where I'm mostly wounded. It's where it needs most of my attention. I can't do CODA without NA, but I can't stay clean without CODA either. And that's kind of how I see it. So I keep one foot in NA, but I spend most of my time working on shame recovery and healing relationships and healing myself and healing my little girl. So that brings me up to today, and gives you guys a basis of where I come from. I want to start out with a really short meditation, and it's going to take probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes maybe. So it's just kind of a casual thing. But I just thought that it might help us open up a little bit and be able to connect with each other, be able to let our higher powers in, and create some framework for letting these messages come in and heal our hearts. So that's my hope for this. So to start with, just take a deep breath, a couple deep breaths. You guys know how to breathe. You guys know how to close your eyes. You guys know how to do this. So just relax, and I want you to consider, what if the shame that you carry that sometimes feels so powerful and so real is actually a big lie and isn't the truth about you at all? What if most of the shame you've been carrying isn't even yours, that it's just someone else's shame that's been passed down to you with hurtful comments, impossible standards, and conditional acceptance? What if you're actually perfect exactly as you are, with all your flaws and shortcomings, regardless of what you've done or not done? What if there's no such thing as being bad, or not being enough, or being a failure? What if you were designed to be exactly as you are, to go exactly where you've been and do exactly what you've done, so you can be exactly who you are today and take the next step you're going to take, and the step after that, and the step after that? What if everything that has happened in your life has had purpose and was meant to be? What if there's another you behind the you the outside world sees, and all of life's events were just intended to awaken that you, the real, authentic you? What if everything you've been chasing has been inside you all along? What if that thing is actually love? And not just any love, but love for you. Sweet, precious, amazing, spectacular you. What if you could really surrender all your shame and replace it with love instead? What if your life is a purposeful divine plan for your spiritual awakening? What if you could know a higher power's love right now in a way you've never known before, simply by trading him your shame for true and real love? What if you are the best thing that ever happened to you? What if you are the love of your life? What if a decision is all that stands between you and God, you and freedom, you and happiness, between you and love? The decision to release your shame. What if you make that decision right now and take that leap of faith and release a lifetime of self-doubt, self-loathing, and self-abandonment? What if, at the end of the day, how much love we share is all that really matters? Well, I feel better. Thank you guys for sharing that with me and for joining in that with me. So I'm going to get started on the PowerPoint. So here we go, Shame Management 101. Those of you that have seen my shame workshops before, you might see hints of what I have shared before, but a lot of this content is pretty different. So anyway, me and God talked a lot, and my daughter helped me with the PowerPoint, and so anyway, I'm excited to share this and see where it goes. So what is shame and where does it come from? Let's talk about shame. Healthy shame is a feeling that lets us know when we're not living within our values. So shame as a definition. Wikipedia's definition is an unpleasant, self-conscious emotion typically associated with a negative evaluation of the self. and feelings of distress, exposure, mistrust, powerlessness, and worthlessness. It's a crappy feeling, for sure. As children, healthy shame is a yucky feeling that teaches us right from wrong. It's a boundary, basically. I see it as a God-given boundary that in a healthy environment can help a child to learn to behave in ways that allow them to be loved, and build self-esteem. Healthy shame protects us from acting in ways that may cause us to be offensive or abusive and possibly abandoned or attacked. So let's say I'm a little kid and my sister's playing with a Barbie doll, and I'm looking at that Barbie doll and I'm like, I want that Barbie doll, so I'm going to just grab that Barbie doll. And my mom furrows her brows and says to me in a harsh tone, like, that's not yours. You need to get that back. That is moderate shame, and that can serve in a healthy family environment to teach me. And then I give the Barbie doll back, and then I get mom's smile of approval, and my sister stops crying and she's happy. And so in a healthy environment, shame serves a very important role in teaching us. This is all my opinion, you guys. So if you differ from how I see it, that is absolutely perfect. This is just how I see it. In healthy parenting, the abundant use of approval, adoration, and moderate use of disapproval, shame, together help a child form self-esteem, a sense of security and well-being about their choices and abilities. You can just imagine how unhealthy an environment would be where my mom didn't intervene and she let me just, take my sister's Barbie doll and didn't do anything about it. And my sister then is going to feel violated, and she's going to grow up in a world where things are not fair and things are not safe, and that she has to protect herself from everything, and I grew up entitled. I grew up feeling like everything that I want, I should have, right? There's some narcissism building. So you can see where healthy shame helps us to build relationships and take care of ourselves. So a healthy self-esteem and a sense of security and well-being about their choices and abilities. Did you get this? I sure as hell did not. That example I gave you didn't happen one time in my childhood. I'll tell you what happened in my childhood. If I was caught with the Barbie doll, I would have been whipped, probably. Or my dad could have said, you girls fight it out, leave me out of it. Or at one point, my dad made this rule where if somebody did something to you, because I have 4 sisters, and so them trying to manage us and our drama was always a huge issue for them. They never had time for us. They didn't make time for us. So at one point, I think I was, 7 or 8, when my dad made the rule that if you violated somebody else, like hit them or took something from them, that they were allowed to do it back to you 10 times as hard. And then he just got off the hook and didn't have to do any disciplining at all. In his mind, that was the solution to the problem. So we couldn't slap each other without getting slapped 10 times. We couldn't steal something without getting 10 things stolen from us, and so the consequences were so outrageous. And really, ultimately, that was his neglect. And it was abusive to give permission to each other to hurt each other like that. And we did it too. We hit each other a lot. Sad to say. So yeah, I didn't get this at all. I did not get a healthy sense of security and well-being. Values are learned in a healthy environment. Values are learned and adopted from our family of origin, and then mature and evolve into our own moral compass to help us navigate our relationships with self, God, and others. Again, showing us the value of healthy shame. Without healthy shame, those values just don't have impact. So did that happen for you? Did you get a healthy moral compass out of your childhood? I would say no for me. So toxic shame. What the hell is toxic shame? Very different from healthy shame. It develops due to childhood abuse, abandonment, and neglect. Our Coda book, chapter 2, under our spiritual dilemma, page 18 says, shame causes us to believe we are less than, stupid, foolish, worthless, inadequate, or unwanted. It diminishes our true sense of identity and destroys our belief that we are loving human beings. It erodes our self-esteem and sense of equality in the world. You guys, that is so painful. That is so painful to live like this. Overuse, misuse, non-use, and neglect of healthy shame in our childhoods creates toxic shame, trauma, and PTSD. And I suffer from all of those, along with codependence. We hold a deep belief that we are unworthy, unlovable, or different. I am bad. I am not enough. There's something wrong with me. Core shame wounds cause deep mistrust in self and all relationships. If I can't trust me, I sure can't trust you. Therefore, impeding development and maturity affects many or all areas of life. So all those maturity milestones that I was supposed to hit growing up at age 6 months, at age 2.5, at age 5, at age 12. I mean, I missed all that stuff. Instead, I'm like dealing with this shame all the time. And I'm not taking healthy risks and then learning life's lessons from them. Like everything is chaotic. Shameful beliefs about oneself continue to result in self-defeating choices that reinforce the shameful beliefs, creating a progressive agonizing cycle. So I feel bad about myself. And so I'm making choices based on feeling bad about myself. And those are the self-defeating choices. And then, of course, they don't usually turn out that well. And then, I end up with another failure, another failed relationship, another mistake, someone's mad at me, another punishment, another, whatever it is. And then I see the result of that as like, yep, I knew it. That's me. That's what happens. That's who I am. So our identity and moral compass are damaged, and we become calibrated to shame and fear instead of love and well-being. And I just feel like that is like the deepest loss of growing up in shame and having shame be so central in my life, is that I missed out on a life where I naturally look around at everything through love and well-being, or even just well-being, or even just okayness, But instead, like I live in this continuous cycle of shame and fear at whatever level. Sometimes it wasn't that bad. Sometimes it was atrocious, but I'm calibrated to that. So everywhere I go, everything I look at, everything I think about is seen through eyes of my shame. Everything is scary, overwhelming. Things are opportunities for everything to go wrong. So all the gifts in life, all the rainbows and butterflies, are they lose their joy. They lose their impact. They just become something to torture me with, like that. Oh, I can never have that. Or if I do get it, then it'll just go away. Values arising from toxic shame are toxic too. So as we grow up and we develop our values, what are those going to look like? Going back to the Barbie doll example, what value am I going to get out of that? Well, if I people please mom, then I'll get my way. So my value is going to be people pleasing authority figures, must make them happy, must make them like me, must make them proud of me so that I can get my way and get away with things. Like that's real, guys. I did that. In entitlement. Without healthy values and a strong moral compass, we are powerless to live empowered lives. We simply survive in painful, destructive cycles, starved of self-love, well-being, and faith. So instead of holding myself in high regard in a way where, I wouldn't work for a company that doesn't give their employees breaks, because I have a value that says that I deserve to have, respect, and I deserve to have I have rights. I have legal rights. I deserve to, work for a company that observes and honors my legal rights. And I worked for a company for a long time that just took people's breaks away because we were just too busy. We just had too many customers in the store, and I totally thought that was okay. And that was a toxic value of mine. That was my value that was toxic. Like, I have to do it. That's what they're saying to do. The 4 elements of our moral compass. Our moral compass is made out of, like, let's say 4 things. This is just what came to me. So anyways, you guys play along. So the compass, let's say, is our values. The compass needle is our feelings. Magnetic north, let's say, is God or God's will for us. Higher power guidance. And then the map is our needs and wants. So if we don't have all 4 of these elements intact, functional, not perfectly, but working in our lives and, open to, evolving, changing, flexibility. We're human. We change all the time. We can't have a moral compass that's stuck from when I was 5, So anyway, this was a powerful awareness for me to see it as a compass. I like to hike a lot, so I don't know if that just seemed like it made sense to me. So we sometimes realize that we do this to ourselves and harshly judge ourselves, that there's something deeply wrong with us, instead of realizing we're compensating for being emotionally injured and chronically spiritually malnourished. I spent years, you guys, minimizing, justifying, underestimating the power of shame in my life. And it always that denial always led me to a shame spiral where I'm curled up in a ball, hating myself, hating my life, totally lost, totally feeling like nothing's ever going to solve this, nothing's ever going to fix this. That's totally shame. And the result of my shameless acting like I'm okay and trying to manage the shame, obey the shame, and control the shame. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that. I just didn't know. Toxic shame can become so painful, one becomes chronically fearful and hypervigilant to prevent it. The fear of shame can become as prominent and debilitating as the shame itself. I want to take a second and talk about fear of shame because shame itself is like a shitty feeling for sure, but it's the fear of it and the way that we catastrophize it that makes it such an ominous presence in our lives. I can only speak for myself. Well, I've talked to lots of you too, but it's the fear of shame that really becomes the culprit because my fear of shame means that life is just this big world full of, in my shame-based mind, that the whole world is just filled with landmines. Everywhere is a landmine, and I can't walk 2 steps without the fear of stepping on a landmine. I'm gonna make someone mad at me. I'm gonna make them leave me. I'm gonna I'm gonna not be prepared for something and be exposed. Some of the fear fantasies are just ridiculous, and there's reasonable fear behind them. It's just that the shame takes over, grabs it, and then catastrophizes it. So we all should have, okay, I don't want to shit all over you guys, but it's reasonable to have a concern about planning for my retirement. I'm 50, I'm 51, and I need to have plans. I need to put money away in my 401k. I need to get my house paid off. I need to take care of my health. I need to do all those things. And those are great ways to love myself and take good care of me. But what the shame says is, oh my God, it's horrible. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to have enough money set aside. What happens if this? What happens if that? That's toxic shame. And it's really the fear of shame that tells me these stories that terrify me, that become so big that what happens, and I do this less. I do this a lot less than I used to, but because it attaches itself to something like retirement or my future, that then my future has so much shame attached to it that I just avoid it. So now it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because I'm avoiding it because the shame tells me that it's like such a big deal. When instead, love could tell me that I just take baby steps. I just do one thing at a time. I don't have to solve it all right now. I have my whole life to figure it out. I have the next decade and a half to figure it out. I just, I can talk to people. I can do, but shame doesn't tell me any of that. Shame just catastrophizes it, turns it into a big problem, and scares me so much that I'm going to procrastinate, put it off, make it horrible, or go the other way and become hypervigilant about it, save every penny, put it all away, and not live my life right now, And either way is destructive and debilitating. The other part of living with fear all the time of this shame in the background is that it creates, for me, hopelessness, anxiety, and depression. And so my question is, do you feel that? Can you relate to that? So how do we survive toxic shame? We become codependent. So in my mind, the patterns and characteristics of codependence are all about how I survive the toxic shame. They are band-aids, if you will, for that, for the fear, for the shame itself, for those feelings of being out of control. And so what do? I create I create these patterns and ways of managing that fear, and it shows up as the patterns and characteristics of codependence. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit. These are not on slides. I'm just reading off of our Codependence Anonymous patterns and characteristics of codependence. So I'm going to focus on the low self-esteem patterns. So the first one that I'm looking at says, have difficulty making decisions. Okay, well, I'm shame-based. So yeah, I'm going to have difficulty making decisions because I'm going to decide wrong. It's going to come back and bite me. I'm gonna piss somebody off. If I make a decision like that, then I can't trust that somebody's not going to disagree with me and then judge me. And I have no way to protect myself from the judgment. If people judge me, then I must be wrong. So yeah, I'm gonna get trapped in that cycle of difficulty. Like, there's no way to trust that, and often what we'll do is adopt other people's decisions. Oh, well, if you think that's a good decision, then I'll do it. We never get that healthy shame development where we learn to make our own decisions and then have realistic experiences of of failure or letdown. And then we go, okay, well, yeah, that wasn't ideal. Maybe I'll do that a little different next time. And instead, we just catastrophize it. We can't make a bad decision. So I'm just going to be safe if I just decide what everybody else is doing. Or I'll ask, the people that are the most, let's say, powerful in my life, the people that I give the most power to. And as long as they don't disagree with me, I don't really care if everybody else disagrees with me, but I don't want them to look down on me, So I'll go to another one. Value others' approval of their thinking, feelings, and behavior over their own. Well, I just talked about that, so I'm going to skip that. Seek recognition and praise to overcome feeling less than. Yeah, if I got shame, I'm going to need you to fix it. I'm going to need you to fix it by telling me like, oh, Heidi, what a great workshop. Like, that was so awesome. Oh, I learned new things I never heard before. That was the best workshop ever. And then that fixes my little shame inside that says that like, oh, I have nothing to share. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, people are not going to agree with me, So have difficulty admitting a mistake. Yeah, if I'm shame-based, if I admit that I made a mistake, then you're going to see me as less than. Then somehow that's going to mean that that everything I do is a mistake. Somehow it's going to mean that I am a mistake. Are unable to identify or ask for what they need and want. Yeah, if I'm shame-based, that's like that's full of all kind of landmines, So perceive themselves as superior to others. Yeah, that's going to fix all that toxic shame. Like, I'm just going to put myself up here above you guys. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe another thing that I'm going to do is just keep that to myself. I'll keep that in my head because, people generally don't like arrogance. I don't want you to judge me as arrogant, but in my head, I'm going to be running around going, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're full of shit. Anytime I disagree with you, I'm just going to say no and just not be open-minded. Okay, so I'm going to switch and do control patterns. Ooh, one of my favorite. So lavish gifts and favors on those they want to influence. Yeah, that'll fix that shame. Because then you'll think that I'm generous, and you'll think that I'm loving and I'm kind, and I'm, and that you mean a lot to me. And then you'll like me and you won't leave me. So that fixes my shame. Use charm and charisma to convince others of their capacity to be caring and compassionate. Yeah, I pretty much covered that. Use blame and shame to exploit others emotionally. Yeah, I'm going to put all my shame on you instead. So I've got all this shame. And then if I, take the focus off of me and I focus on all of your traits, how you carry yourself, the mistakes you've made, you're not all that, then I don't have to feel one down. I can feel one up instead. And, that's what most of the patterns are about for me, is trying to maintain a one up so that I don't feel the one down that comes with my toxic shame. Avoidance patterns. Act in ways that invite others to reject shame or express anger toward them. Okay, so that might show up, if I'm a shame-based codependent, that might show up like, I'm going to sabotage my relationships because that way I never really let anyone get that close, because then they'll really see me and my shame will be exposed. I'm not going to let myself be vulnerable. And so, if I'm, if I act in, ways that, are critical or, sort of borderline offensive, and then people get all, angry and reject me, then I can blame them because they're just too picky, or they're just too perfectionistic, or they just demand too much, and I can skate out of the relationship without actually ever having to negotiate my needs. So I'll do one more. Let's see. Withhold expressions of appreciation. I've struggled with that. So if I lift you up, somehow I feel one down. And that's changing for me with practice, that I can feel good about myself and stay right-sized, and hold you up in high regard, and not do it because I'm blowing smoke up your butt, but because it's true and you deserve it, because we all deserve to be held in high regard, and that it does my heart good and creates a safe world for me where people generously give expressions of appreciation to each other. That's the world I want to live in. So I'm not going to withhold anymore, because who am I hurting? I'm hurting me. And I'm also coddling my shame and telling it that it's true when it's really bullshit. Okay. Okay. Sorry for my cussing. I'm not done yet though. Okay. So how do we survive toxic shame? consequences of codependent patterns and characteristics. So where does all that go? So when I'm acting out in the patterns and characteristics, it creates the illusion of safety, control, or feeling normal for a minute, but this is temporary and usually results in a shame spiral sooner or later. That has been my experience. Progressively reinforcing the toxic shame due to the self-abandonment, acting out, acting in, neglect, and unmanageability of our lives. So even though I might get relief for a while, sooner or later, I'm going to end up in that, shame spiral where I'm, all by myself, curled up in a ball, judging the crap out of me and feeling like a failure. There's something wrong with me. I can't figure it out. I can't fix this. I don't know what to do. We eventually become preoccupied with controlling and managing our behaviors and usually don't even know the shame or fear of shame are driving it all. So we have both the shame and the fear of shame that are driving all these crazy behaviors. And we're so busy trying to figure out what to do in this relationship, figure out what to do about my job, figure out what to do about my children, try and keep the house perfectly clean so I don't have shame about that, and we don't even know that shame is in the background just driving the whole thing. So I'm going to switch screens here really quick because I want to embarrass myself and show you guys this little diagram that I like. This is just a little diagram that kind of represents how I see shame and my shame system and how it relates to the patterns and characteristics. So let's say that this is me. Here is me. I am born. Bear with me, guys. Oh, that's such a little wonky heart. I love it. Okay, so there's little me, very unique, and I'm born, and that's my preciousness. Let's say that's my preciousness. That's my source. That's the little piece of God that I am. That is that's my life energy, prana. That is precious me. Let's say, and I'm born into the world, and let's say I radiate me out into the world. That's kind of what I'm here to do. I'm here to experience relationship with the world, relationship with me, relationship with my needs and wants. I'm radiating out into the world. And I have this tool called healthy shame. And let's say that it teaches me to have a healthy boundary around me so that I am in reality of my impact on the world, and that I keep that reasonable so that I don't cause harm to others and I don't allow others to harm me, and I don't abandon my needs and wants, but I don't step on the needs and wants of others. There's my healthy shame boundary. And so I'm humming along, and I've got this childhood that's kind of messed up, let's say. And so let's say somebody, my dad calls me fat. And then somebody says, "You're stupid." And then somebody says, "You're never going to be anything. You're never going to be anything." Ugh, that's hard. And then somebody else says, people that, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to just tell you this. It's weird, but I remember being in, I want to say 8th grade, 9th grade, and in PE. And this guy who's like one of the big school bullies yells, he's criticizing this other kid who's like a freshman, and yells across the whole room like, "Dude, you got pimples on your ass. That's like so gross." And I've carried shame about that my whole life. And, cause pimples happen. And like the power that my poor little adolescent gave to this, gave to this, asshole. And that, that voice that comes up and like, I've carried that my whole life, and I'm just like, really, like, no more, guys, just not doing it. So, but those are the kinds of events that can sometimes like completely form us. It's just super sad that we take that on, and it's because we're shame-based. So, so here all this stuff happens, and things, I have failure at school, like I was a really good student at school, and if I got a B, I felt ashamed of it, and then I hit 7th grade, and I went through all this drama, insanity, depression, fear, social fear. Now there's names for it. Now like my daughter's going through all that stuff, and And so now there's treatment for it. It's acceptable. It happens. You know, when it happened back when I was a kid, nobody knew what it was called. It was just like, suck it up and knock it off, you know? And so everything that I was going through wasn't treated at all. And I mean, it was horrible. I just wanted to stay in bed all day long and do nothing. I didn't want to face the world. I didn't want to face anyone. And I failed so many classes. And I was so like, I had used perfectionism to fix my shame for so many years and get straight A's, straight A's, straight A's. And then when I hit 7th grade, like my first report card, there was like 2 F's and a D and a C. And I don't even think I got 1 A. And it was like, I just wanted to die, you know? So those are the kinds of things that, you know, that really damage us. And so here is my poor little self inside, you know, and I can't even stand, I'm in so much pain here. You know, I can't even stand being myself. I can't even stand who I am. So what am I going to do? I'm going to stop being me. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to abandon me, and I'm going to go up here. I'm going to get out of me, get out of those yucky feelings, get out of my yucky reality, escape that shame, and make up a fantasy me. So here's my inauthentic me. Here's the fantasy of me. Here's the me that says, I'm perfect. I'm in control. I've got it all. I don't have any bad feelings. Like, no, I'm great. I can take care of anyone. I can take care of everyone. I can do anything. There's my little fantasy. And that is my patterns and characteristics. Go up there and make up a fantasy. If I act this, there's the story that, you know, if I make mom proud of me, if I kiss up to her, then I'll always get my way. And then I won't have to, you know, have things taken away from me. She won't abandon me. She won't look at me like I don't matter. She won't give me the cold shoulder. She won't shun me. She won't beat me, you know? And so there's my fantasy story, 1,000 different fantasy stories that I would make to escape my shame. And it works for a minute. It works for a while. It might work for a day. It might work for a week. You know, I've had some fantasies that lasted a few years. But sooner or later, they're going to stop working. And then what's going to happen is that I'm going to have a shame spiral. And I'm going to land right back in my shame. And the shame is going to feel worse than it did before, because I've got the added shame from my self-abandonment. You know, the disappointment of making up that big story that, you know, this was going to fix it. And so the disappointment of being a failure one more time. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to try harder. I'm going to use harder. I'm going to make up a better fantasy. Here we go. This is the one that'll work. So before I tried to diet down here, let's say I got shame about I'm fat. Dad taught me that. So I tried to diet, and then I shame spiraled because, you know, I had a Big Mac. So now I'm going to try harder, and I'm going to not only stop eating anything that tastes good, but I'm also going to exercise every day for 2 hours. Well, the minute that I don't do that, the minute that I go to bed instead, the minute that I have a French fry, right, I'm going to shame spiral again. You guys, I've done this my whole life. What a mess. So this is how I see it. I abandon me. I'm acting out in my patterns and characteristics of codependence. I'm shameless instead of shameful. And it always leads to a shame spiral that leads me back to shameful. And anyway, I hope that you guys can follow that. But I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so yuck, that's all really shitty. What do we do? And that's what I want to talk about for the second half of our workshop. What do we do? We work the steps. Woohoo! So, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over toxic shame. The original step says others, so I wanted to put that in here. But we admitted we were powerless over toxic shame, that our lives had become unmanageable. And another way to say that is we're facing the truth that our devotion to shame has only caused more shame. It just doesn't work. We cannot manage the shame with our patterns and characteristics. We can't fight it. We've got to find another way. And so my question to you is, has shame been a good higher power? That is the harsh reality that we have to face. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. In other words, realizing that if we were to devote ourselves to love, the result would be more loving. What do you know? Could be. Do you believe in love? Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. In other words, choosing to fire shame as our higher power and devote ourselves to a loving higher power instead. So which one do you choose to be your higher power? So let's talk about love and shame. Love considers your successes, your attempts, your sacrifices, your motives, your vision, your challenges, your resourcefulness, your feelings, your suffering, and your growth. Shame is only concerned with the outcome, and even if it's good, it still could have been better. Love offers care, hope, encouragement, warmth, suggestions, second chances, harmony, relief, sustainability, endless support, and companionship. Shame offers judgment, indifference, exclusion, catastrophizing, and empty promises. Love gives without expecting in return. Shame expects without giving in return. Do you choose to fire shame? If so, make a decision. We can do it right now. We're probably going to have to do it 1,000 times, but you can start right now or continue right now. Overhauling your value system. So it's time to stop playing by shame's rules and introduce love's rules. So all those tapes that we have playing in our head that shame taught us, that we've become very attached to over the years, rules that never made us safe, we just thought they did, and they did maybe for a minute offer some relief, but ultimately there's a price to pay. So we got to stop and we got to try something new. And here's how I see that: is we trade in rules for principles. Rules are immature values. They're rigid, controlling, absolute, unrealistic, defensive, solitary, and archaic. Because, well, hold on. Okay, and principles, as opposed to principles, which are mature values, flexible, expanding, evolving, relative, wise, spiritual, inclusive. There's room in principles. There's no room in rules. Rules are made reactively by our wounded child through fear and shame as a strategy for defense and survival. It's what we had to do. I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's what we had to do. It's what I had to do. Thank God I had rules. It helped me somehow lessen some of the consequences or the effects of living in, with an alcoholic raging dad and a codependent raging mom and, all that stuff. Like, all I could do is just make rules that would try to at least help me feel safe, and sometimes worked. Principles are developed consciously through a loving, caring self-parent as a strategy for living a rich, fulfilling life. So you can see how important it is for us to overhaul our value system. And when we get to CODA, we start doing that by working the steps. And there's a transition period where we're kind of messed up, where it's really hard. Like, the old values haven't really left yet. The new values aren't really trustworthy yet. It's messy, guys. It is. You're not alone. Do you need to trade in some rules for principles? Something to ask yourself, think about. Healthy shame, the antidote to toxic shame. Developing healthy shame, learning to live right-sized. I'm not better than, I'm not less than. This is the antidote for me, you guys. Shame-based codependents often experience one down and one up extremes, shameful and shameless. These cycles of behavior and consequences take a difficult toll on our lives, creating pain, exhaustion, and confusion. To end the cycle, we must first be able to identify the one down and one up cycles as misleading elements of our disease, knowing that we are never less than or better than. We are simply who we are. Then, when a one up or one down is triggered, we ask our higher power for help to use that opportunity to heal our relationship with healthy shame and learn to live right-sized, where we are safe from shame. It's like base when you were a kid and you were playing tag, and you're like, you're safe because you're on base, That's how I see it. Like, my little kid has this place called Healthy Shame where she's right-sized and nothing can touch her. Nobody can tell her that she's less than. Nobody can make her responsible for things that aren't her fault. She's allowed to be human. She makes mistakes, and she's still lovable and she's acceptable. So important to have that in life. Right-sized starts with me knowing I'm not God and I'm valuable to God. Like, both of those are equally important. It's almost like saying I'm not God is the boundary on the top end, and I'm valuable to God is the boundary on the bottom end. And then I don't go below that, and I don't go above that, and so it's like I stay right sized. I stay in the middle, with healthy shame that hurts when I go into one up or one down hurts. Hurts me, whether it hurts physically or not, or whether it hurts emotionally or not, it hurts me. It does harm. It's right sized to be empowered, humble, and vulnerable. And, when I first started looking at shame and its impact in my life, I thought that empowerment, I thought that I had empowerment understood. I thought I knew what empowerment was. But what I now realize is that what I called empowerment was one up. Being perfect or being untouchable, being, having a vision and holding myself to it diligently. I thought that was empowered. When I can always speak up and I can always stand up for myself and I can always. And the minute that I'm starting to use that always word, I'm probably in some arrogance. I'm in some denial of my human frailty. I'm in, I'm already setting myself up for the next shame spiral, because life isn't an always situation. The only always to me is that I always show up for myself to the best of my ability, that I always keep working my program, that I, but I can't put those behaviors, those always behaviors on me. I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. So it's right sized to be authentic with my woundedness, my greatness, my feelings, my powerlessness, my defects, my struggles, my humanness, my privilege, and my gifts. And I can just wrap my arms around all of that, all of the aspects of me. None of them need to be abandoned. None of them need to go stand in the corner. None of them, are put out back, in the backyard where like all of them, especially the wounded ones, are very important, that they're front and center for me, that I am taking good care of them. There are those areas of my life where I'm really more wounded than others, and I act out with things or fail to stand up for myself, or fail to work my program right. And that is perfectly right size for my program. I do not have to do my program perfect. I don't have to do anything perfect. It is right size to take care of my needs and wants and stop self-abandoning. That was a hard one for me to get. I thought it was right size for me to take care of you and make sure that you were okay. And then if there's any leftovers, I could have some. And I don't live that way anymore. The 12 steps are all about living right sized. Looking at my time. So we already talked about step 1, 2, and 3, but I want to look at the steps through the lens of right sized. So step 4 is our moral inventory, and it's really another way of saying, am I right sized and living in integrity? Step 5 is sharing the truth about myself, even the hard parts, and being okay to be human. Step 5 gives me permission to do that. Step 6 and 7, my defects. My part is to be willing, and God's job is the heavy lifting. So I just get willing, God removes the defects of character. That's really right sized. That has been one of the hardest lessons. It continues to be one of the hardest lessons for me. I think I can fix my defects. I'm sure of it. and then that just keeps me stuck in them. But when I'm right sized, I do my part, which is be willing, which is put my time and attention on them, care for them, be honest with myself about them, admit my mistakes, be willing to let them shift, be courageous enough to try new things. But God's job is to make that miracle happen. Step 8 and 9, amends. Others deserve accountability because they're my equals, and I deserve forgiveness because I am worthy. And that is about living right sized. And the steps 8 and 9 tell us that we need to get right sized about our past and our history. Step 10, daily inventory. We will be wrong sometimes. We're human. So there's a whole step just for cleaning up your right-sized messes. Step 11, relationship with your higher power. I can't do it alone, all right? That's me trying to play God if I think I don't need to continue to work on that relationship, understand what it is that my higher power's will is for me, and seek to have better and better understanding and more intimacy there. That is, God is my best ally. And then step 12, service. We are now blessed, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps. We've had a spiritual awakening, and it's right sized to pay it forward. That's me giving back. So those of you that are not familiar with the steps, that probably was a little confusing. How to take your life back from shame. Um, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Damn those boundaries. All right, we're going to talk about boundaries. All right, these are some examples of my boundaries with shame. There's no other way for this to happen. It doesn't happen without boundaries. You're not going to heal your shame if you don't have strong boundaries with shame and with yourself around shame. So the shame is going to just by default keep on doing what it's always been doing. And so this is where we intervene. So shame is not allowed to talk to me in a demeaning way. I choose not to listen to shame when it tells me I'm not safe to be myself. Shame is not allowed to tell me my life is shit and I'm a fuck up. Not one more time. I feel myself getting angry, you guys. I love it. Shame is not allowed to catastrophize and scare me. Nope, not. Shame is not allowed to stop me from following my dreams or my higher power. I choose not to obey the shame when it lies and tells me I must caretake others to be safe. Horseshit, I say. I choose not to wake up every day and check in with shame. I'm going to elaborate on that just a little bit because that's such a big part of my experience. That was what my life was like. I had no idea that I was doing it, but I did it from the time I was a very little kid. That I would wake up every day and the flood of shame would come in. And I didn't know it was there. I didn't know I was shame-based. I had no idea what all that was, but immediately feeling like there's something wrong, feeling like everything is overwhelming, being afraid, the fear of shame, that life's going to fall apart. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it right. It's almost like bracing yourself, looking around and going, okay, what's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong? And doing an inventory in my head really quick of everybody, who they are and how they see me. I would be like, okay, is mom, okay, here's mom, here, mom's sick right now, or she's mad at me about this, or she needs me to get up with the babies, or she, whatever, like, okay, here's dad, here's his thing. Okay, just stay out of his way. Here's my sister. Okay, well, I got to protect her at school because everybody picks on her and she gets bullied a lot. Here's Heather, my younger sister, and she's always in trouble and always making a mess. I got to keep her in line. It's like immediately as soon as I woke up. And even when I was religious as a child, like I would wake up and pray for those things. Like that was like drilled into me. A little bit older, but that was drilled into me and so I would just take my shame inventory and then spout it at God. Like, God, help me be perfect. God, help me fix dad. Help me fix mom. Help me make mom this. Help me, just like God's going to answer those prayers and enable my codependence. I didn't know. God bless me. But anyway, so that all evolved into this lifetime of waking up and just every day checking in with the shame, because that feeling, that overwhelming feeling of shame, or that underlying that subtle feeling of shame, usually it's not subtle for me, but that feeling of like something's off, and the fear of shame that everything, what's on my plate today, what could go wrong, and it's like when you wake up in the morning, your boundaries are really weak, they're thin, they're we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable in that state. Our frontal lobe is not fully awake yet. We tend to wake up more in our fight, fight, or freeze brain, in our child brain, or and so so I don't have my whole resources on board, and so it's really easy to let the shame just by default comes in and tells me that everything's going to go wrong, and so then I have to immediately start with the defects of characters and the patterns and characteristics and start to get my life all lined up. And I did that religiously for years and years. Made an inventory, get my to-do list out, add a bunch of shit to it, prioritize stuff, try to be in control, try to be in control. And today I choose not to wake up every day and check in with shame. I don't do it. Shame doesn't get to ruin my mornings every fucking morning. I choose not to let others' shamelessness get shame all over me. So when other people are shameless, like that asshole that was, when I was in high school, that's a perfect example of somebody getting shame all over me. And then me carrying it, doing my part to carry it my whole life. But today I can have boundaries where if something feels yucky and uncomfortable, I don't have to let it in. I choose not to believe shame is who I am. That is easy today because I have been doing this for a while, but it was really hard to get started. It's like a fish in a fishbowl that doesn't know it's in water. Like you're just so used to it. You're so conditioned to it that you just don't see it. Today I don't believe that. I don't believe that shame is who I am. Shame is not allowed to deprive me of love and compassion for one more day. Not one. I choose not to act shamelessly when I'm triggered and abandon myself. Just because I choose that doesn't mean that I can always keep my integrity around that. So I start with choosing it, and then I turn it over to God, and God works the miracle where I don't have to abandon myself when I'm triggered. But my job's to choose it. I choose not to let shame define my potential or my value. This is all a work in progress, guys. The restoration to sanity takes time. And I'm not restoring myself to perfection. I'm just restoring myself to sanity. I choose not to let shame tell me stories that make me feel fearful of others. Oh my God, I spent hours and hours and days and decades making up stories, that scare me like crazy about others. It's like the scary stories might fix the feelings for a minute by giving me a sense of one up, raging at somebody or raging about their this or their that or judging them. But the one up always turns into a one down. And then what I've done is I've made somebody that is important in my life, if it's, somebody like a family member or something, I've made them scary to be around. I've created a hostile environment. I created that. My shame did that. And I choose not to do that. I choose not to let shame parent me harshly to get things done. That critical parent that shames you into get off your ass, get busy, clean your whatever, go take care of your paperwork. You've been neglecting that for so long. I don't let shame parent me. Period. I choose not to let shame cause me to be one up and then have a shame spiral. Every time shame sells me on this one up, I always have a shame spiral. It's never worth it. Shame is not allowed to lie and tell me I need a relationship to be okay. I'm okay the way my life looks today. Shame is not allowed to demand unrealistic expectations of me. I'm not going to compare myself to some fantasy illusion of perfection and then always feel one down. Shame is not allowed to criticize my body or my sexuality. I'm still struggling with that. I have a lot of body shame and a lot of sexual shame from my dad's sexual abuse. And so that's a work in progress, but I don't allow it. I choose not to let shame tell me I'm not enough in any way. It's just non-negotiable, guys. Shame is not allowed space in my head to run the show. I just don't hand over the steering wheel to shame and just let it take off and tell me all kinds of crazy shit. And I did that for years. Never figured anything out, never solved a problem, never found harmony or success, or never worked, still doesn't. I choose not to let shame talk me into abandoning or avoiding my feelings. My feelings are always important. They're always valuable. They always tell me something about myself that I need to know. They might not always be accurate, but they always need my care. Shame is not allowed to make up stories that make me a prisoner in my life. Shame loves to tell you that there's no way to go. If you do this, then that bad thing will happen. But if you do that, then that bad thing will happen. That was like one of my favorite things for shame to do. Nope, you don't get to tell me that there's no way. You don't get to tell me that there's not a higher power in my life that always has blessings and solutions available. You don't get to tell me that. F you. All right. I choose not to let shame make me apathetic or avoidant and give up on fighting for me. I'm not going to let shame tell me to give up. It's not worth it. Don't bother. I just do not listen to that. I do not listen to the, put that off and we don't have to really worry about that. And, no, I don't do that. Procrastination always hurts, always causes a shame spiral. Shame is not allowed to turn good things in my life into burdens. I have a good example of that right now. I'm going on a whitewater trip in a few weeks, 11 days in the Grand Canyon. And I've been waiting 2 years for this. And I've got some concerns, and I'm not, I need to address the concerns. I need to take care of my feelings around it. I need to stay in reality around it. I need to surrender. I need to do what I can to plan. There's a lot I can do, but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to let shame take over and catastrophize it or make up stories about it or tell me that it's going to not work out. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. I'm just not doing it. I'm not. Because I could spend the next 2 weeks worrying about one of the most amazing bucket list items that I mean, it's the top bucket list item in my life, you know, and or I can spend the next 2 weeks being excited, being happy, being full of joy, and having my arms wide open for like whatever beautiful experience that God decides it's going to be for me. So I choose the latter. Shame can't, I'm not giving it to shame to just let it shit all over it. Shame is not allowed to cause me to be critical and controlling. That happens. I do get critical and controlling. And then I put the brakes on the shame and I surrender to my higher power and I work my 10th step and I make amends and I get right sized again, especially when it comes to my teenage daughter. I choose not to let shame tell me my feelings are weak. Feelings are not weak. They take a great amount of courage. That's bullshit. Shame is not allowed to lie and tell me I'm different from everyone. That's bullshit. Shame is not allowed to lie and tell me I'll never figure my life out. No, I'm learning all the time about who I am and what I need and want and how things work and what I can do that takes good care of me and what my part is, what God's part is. I'm learning all the time. And then, you know, you make one mistake or, you know, and then your shame just takes it all away from you in just a blink of an eye and says, you'll never figure it out. It's just so quick to judge. It's so quick to be black and white. Not one more time. Shame is not allowed to cause me to rage or shame others. That was a hard one for me to wrap my mind around. I'm a rager. I rage at me and others. And that rage usually comes with shaming. And that's my boundaries. I don't allow shame to act out in my life like that. That's my boundary. I don't always keep it, but that's my boundary. Shame is not allowed to lie and tell me I should be perfect. I choose not to let shame cause me to obsess and generate more shame. Obsession just keeps me trapped in it. It's a downward spiral for sure. And, you know, basically what I see as obsession is that, like, so I have this worry, I've got this little concern, maybe a big concern, you know, and I start to think about it and it builds and builds and builds, and I'm making the fear bigger and bigger, not smaller and smaller. I'm not getting any closer to a solution. I'm not getting any closer to turning it over. I'm not getting, you know, obsession just generates more and more fear of shame, all the possible scenarios and all the possible stories of what can go wrong. And at the end of the day, obsession just creates more shame. No, thank you. Shame is not allowed to ruin one more vacation. Every vacation I ever went on was ruined by shame because, you know, first of all, I had a lot of shame-based vacations when I was a kid. Anytime that we went anywhere, my dad would, you know, rage and shame about how much money we were spending, how ungrateful we were, you know, that we weren't ready in time, that we didn't pack our stuff right, that we forgot things, or that, you know, if we asked to stop someplace, you know, it's like, well, how much do you think I made of money? I mean, just, we were always raged at wanting things, or even being too excited would trigger my dad. And, you know, vacations are all about excitement, right? And he just, whatever his shame was, he would just get super rageful about these 3 little happy balls of joy, you know, and then just start shaming us, you know, and raging about it. So of course that turned all my vacations into that same thing. Every vacation I had triggered that carried shame that I was carrying in my body, carrying in my heart and spirit, you know. And so then I'm trying to get ready for vacations while I got this PTSD on my shoulder, you know, that I am unaware of. And so I'm doing the same thing to my kids, like, get your stuff ready. Don't, you know, make sure that you bring enough warm clothes and like drill sergeant shit, you know. And then at the end of the day, you know, something gets done, something gets lost, something forgot, you know. And it's like, oh my God, not one more vacation. No, thank you. Shame is not allowed to tell me my life should be any different than it is today. That is like a big sigh of relief in my heart. That is an affirmation that I have put on my wall. I choose not to let shame seduce me into fantasies to fix my feelings. You're not going to just like wave this little magic flag of like, ooh, here's the guy that'll fix everything, or here's the job that'll fix everything, or, you know, oh, here's the diet that will fix everything. You know, like, nope, I'm not gonna believe the shame. It's just full of shit. You know, it's unnecessary. I have a program. I have recovery. I have my higher power. Shame is not allowed to tell me I am better than or worse than anyone else. I choose not to believe shame when it lies and tells me there's not enough. And so specifically, I'm talking about financial shame. I'm talking about there's not enough love to go around. That if somebody else, if one of my friends like becomes best friends with someone else, that I'll be left out. If someone else gets a promotion, then that means that I won't get a promotion. If someone else has good things that come into their life, then somehow I'm one down or left behind. No, I live in an abundant universe today, and that is not where shame lives. I choose not to believe shame when it lies and says this will never change. Hopelessness is totally shame. I choose not to let shame convince me to be complacent in my recovery. No, I need to persevere. I need to continue to heal. I need to do service. I need to give back. I need to show up for me. Shame is not allowed to hold on to old resentments that keep me stuck. Resentments are always about shame. Shame wants to keep those in your back pocket so you can get a little one up. It's like an old stash of pot that you're just not willing to let go of. I don't know. I'm a drug addict in recovery, so I think about drugs a lot as analogies. I choose not to live in the all or nothing of shame. There's a whole rainbow of life out here. There's a million different ways that things can go. Shame always tries to convince me that this is exactly how it's going to be. And there's, everything is dire in the world of shame, and that's just horseshit. I live in God's world. I choose not to believe shame when it lies and tells me I don't deserve a healthy relationship. There's 8 billion people on this planet. I think I'm okay. Shame is not allowed to tell me my feelings are too much or I am too much. I may not be everybody's cup of tea, and that is perfectly okay because not everybody is my cup of tea. So we're going to talk about using self-parenting to arrest the shame. I'm just checking in on my time. I've got about another 15 minutes. I think that is going to be just about right. I know I'm flying through this stuff pretty fast, guys, but that's all I can do. Shame is not allowed, the biggest boundary here, right? Shame is not allowed to beat up my precious inner child anymore. And only I can stop that. Only I, as a self-parent, can get in the way and stop that conditioned default voice that's going on in the back of my head that's always beating up my precious inner child. That is up to me. I have to be the one that intervenes. Nobody else can do that. So I work at using love and care and healthy anger, which you guys have heard a little of, to protect yourself and your precious inner child from the slimy, vicious destruction of toxic shame. Don't underestimate it. I like to see it as, my teenager, my inner child work, we come to understand that we have different ages of us, and my adolescent, my adolescent inner child, which, tends to be pretty self-righteous, pretty rebellious, pretty independent. And I like to harness her energy and her power in this. And I think that may be the root of this sense that I have adopted, around shame, to just say, fuck off, shame. You don't get to just run my life anymore. There is a self-parent in me that's loving and caring and coddling and everything's great and happy and rainbows. And, but when it comes to shame and the damage that it does, I need that powerful part of me that can stand up and say, I'm not going to take it anymore. And I think that I owe that to my adolescent. That's where a lot of that is born. And then integrates into my healthy self-parent to become protective energy, protective, loving care, and not just sunshine and rainbows. But I have lots of those too. Do power work to release the toxic shame energy, one down and one up, when you're in a trigger, and get back to your right-sized power. So, my self-parent has to first identify, I've been triggered. I'm in a one up or I'm in a one down. Doesn't matter where in that cycle I can intervene. Anywhere that I can intervene is perfect. The sooner the better, but whatever it takes. When I can intervene in that cycle of one up or one down, then I can surrender, I can get humble, I can ask God to remove it, I can put myself in timeout. Timeouts are like one of the best tools that I've ever had in my recovery, to just say, okay, I'm just not going to act right now. I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to text, I'm not going to email, I'm not going to confront. I'm going to wait until I feel like I'm back in my wholeness, like I am not filled with all this energy, where I'm not afraid of somebody or something or the shame. And I'm not always perfect at that. I do it a lot better than I used to, and that's enough and important. But one of the ways that I can get back to right size power is power work. And some of you have come across it in recovery. Some of you probably don't know what it is, but power work is one way to look at it, is to take that healthy anger that we were talking about and use it to move that shame out of your body, out of your system. And you can do it with growling. You can do it with powerful statements. The way that I was taught to do it is to say, I release this shame, to say it loud, to say it proud, to say it with healthy anger. I release this shame. I will no longer be afraid. I will not abandon myself. That often can help release some of that one up, one down energy and neutralize it to get back in my healthy center. Usually it takes a little while, like I'm going to wait, 20 minutes or 30 minutes in order to just, feel my brain chemistry settle down, my nervous system settle down, and feel that conscious contact again. And then I know that I'm right-sized. And I want to go back and say, like, power work, I have done hundreds of times. It is very key in my recovery. Not everyone, I didn't mean to do that. Let me see. Okay, not everyone does it, but it's been very, very useful for me. Okay, meditate on God's unconditional love and see it melting away the toxic shame you have carried for a lifetime. This has also been a key component of my recovery. I started doing this actively probably with about 8 years in. And what I would do, and I'll just kind of tell you what I did, but what I would do is I would close my eyes and go into a meditation, and I would bring my higher power in, and then I would try to visualize the shame, and what would come to me is like this big black, I don't know, it was kind of tarry, kind of like lava, but tarry, and it was just this toxic, black, nasty substance that was like on my core. And I would just, so I would see and feel this blue flame, and that's what came to me, was just this blue flame of God's unconditional love. It's like this amazing, brilliant, blue, iridescent, live light that was loving and powerful and eternal. And I would just see it attach itself to the shame and just start to like melt it away or dissolve it, and just work on it, and it was just so soothing to watch that and feel that God was removing the shame just a little bit at a time. And I was doing my part by making the sacred space for that, by putting my time and attention on it, by coming to believe that I deserved that, and that I know that the shame is greater than me, but I know it's not greater than my higher power. So that was a tool that I've used, and I still do. Like when I feel shame come back and I've got something going on that's just like I can't shut my head off, I can't wrap my mind around it, it's bothering me a lot. I did that a lot with my daughter and what she's been going through with depression and anxiety for the last year and a half with adolescent stuff, and I would just go in and work on the shame some more, because it was triggering a lot of my adolescent shame from the abuse I went through, and it it really made a dent in it. So I really recommend that. All right, so I want to talk about using open-mindedness as a bridge. So here we are, this shame-based codependent, and we've got all this shame and we want to turn it into love. Like, that's great, okay, but how do I do that? And one of the ways to do that is to use open-mindedness as a bridge. Like if I can't, I'm over here, here's the shame, I'm trying to get over here where love is. I need to find a way to get there. And open-mindedness helps me do that, because, sometimes I can just go into, like, unlock my attachment to shame and just be open-minded. Like, just leave room for God, I guess is another way to put it. Just leave room for, maybe the shame's not right. Maybe the shame is wrong. Maybe the shame doesn't have it all figured out. And that was really the reason that I wrote that meditation that way, where I said, what if? Because I could not just, I could listen to affirmations all day long. You are an amazing child of God, and it was like foreign language. Like, I couldn't let it in. But if you said, what if you are an amazing child of God? Somehow I could let that in. And it was because there was a bridge there for me, and it was open-mindedness. So learn to look at negative things in life with curiosity, open-mindedness, instead of judgment, which is the shamelessness and, our patterns and characteristics. So to ask yourself, like, I wonder what God is up to. Instead of seeing situations as negative, putting all this judgment on it, the shame tells you how it's going to turn out, and that it's catastrophic, and that everyone shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be doing that. But instead, to step back from the whole thing and say, I wonder what God is up to. And, like, I'm going to give you an example of that, and I'm going to go back to my daughter again. So of course, with Sarah being, in a lot of depression and anxiety, I had, shame triggered. And so what my shame wants to say is, I got to fix this. I got to fix her. I got to make her happy. I got to want to make her live. I got to get her out of danger. The shame is just, like, out of control and telling me all these scary stories. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I know I'm powerless, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get there. I know I can only do so much. I know God is the answer. I had enough recovery to know all those things, but I'm still sitting there in this trigger, in this holding pattern, that just kept on cycling and cycling and cycling. And I'm trying to, my defects of character are going crazy. I'm trying to control her. I'm trying to control events. I'm trying to control situations. I'm catastrophizing all these things and all the stories, and just, and it's like, I miss my happiness. I miss my joy. I miss feeling like we're in good hands and things are okay, and the bridge that I found was to ask myself the question, I wonder what God is up to. Because what that says to me is, first of all, God's not gone. God is up to something. God didn't just abandon us in the middle of this whole thing. God would never do that. So just me asking the question, I wonder what God is up to, opens up the parameters of, like, okay, and then it's the humility of knowing I can't see from here. I'm not God. I can't see from here what God's up to and how this is going to impact her life, my life, her future, her decisions, her relationships, her everything. That isn't up to me. That's between her and God. That's between her and her higher power. That's between her and her soul, and whatever her soul's doing, whatever her soul's up to. But to get out of that shamelessness of, like, this has to stop, the fear of shame, saying that, like, if she ever hurt herself, or if she ever killed herself, or if she ever, if she fails school, if she, and all of my fear about it, I can't just come in and put this Band-Aid on it that says, like, oh, just be happy. Like, no, just think about love and rainbows and lollipops, like, no, this is real. Like, she's in danger. She is scared. She's terrified. That's real. But for me to step back and say, I wonder what God is up to, and leave room for God to communicate with me about what I can do today. And it made all the difference, you guys. It changed that whole situation for me. My relationship with her was very scary. I actually was afraid for a while that, I was going to have to step back because, I was getting triggered so much. And, then a miracle happened, and this huge transition in my heart happened. And we have, like, the best relationship we've ever had. And, I said right here, the restoration of sanity is messy. God, don't I know that? God is always evolving me and all of humanity to new levels of sanity that can be very messy. And I'm coming close to my time. Okay, only got a couple more slides here. So learn to look at negative things in life with curiosity. I already did that. Okay, leave room for the miracle that's unfolding. Ta-da! All right. Efforts will pay off over time. Love yourself exactly where you are. I don't care where you are, what your life looks like right now, how long you've been in CODA, what's going on. Love yourself exactly where you are right now, every right now, not just when you're performing, not just when you're, when you got it figured out, not just when you feel good, not just when others approve of you. Love yourself exactly where you are. Efforts will pay off over time. You have to stop the momentum of shame and build the momentum of love. This is what we work on. Then it will happen more naturally and effortlessly. It's like, it was described to me this way one time, is that we have lots of shame and then moments of freedom, and then lots of shame and then moments of freedom. And then it turns into lots of freedom and moments of shame, and lots of freedom and moments of shame. So let that restoration happen for you. And the best way to do it is love yourself exactly where you are today. Otherwise, you're just loving yourself conditionally. I'm only going to love and have compassion for myself and take good care of me if I deserve it, by performing, by being the best, by having my shit together, by, seeking other people's approval, by everybody loves me, by, by whatever, just shame has an endless list of conditions for loving you. Screw that. That's my teenager again. That's it, guys. It's 2:59. That's funny. Thank you for letting me be of service. Last little gem, just be yourself. That is the only way the real you will ever feel loved. And now I'm going to stop sharing.